For some reason, pessimistic sad boy philosophers are pretty famous. I'm talking Schopenhauer, Cioran, and Mainlander, if that's how you pronounce their names. Maybe when we're down or depressed, we like to look at these people so we don't feel so alone in our suffering. But there is another less talked about philosopher with a pessimistic outlook on life that'd be perfect for this Forgotten Philosopher series. Peter Wessel Zapffe was a 20th century Norwegian philosopher, and I'm a good 95% sure I butchered his name as well. Now, with almost every video in this series so far, the information about this guy is either scarce or not in English. But thankfully, we have access to arguably his most famous work, The Last Messiah. So join me as we explore the life and work of the pessimistic mountain climber. Also, shout out to Aiden Bidgelu9447 for the suggestion. Zapffe was born on December 18th in 1899. He studied law initially, and look, from one law school grad to another, I understand how you could come out of that experience with a negative outlook on life. But it was also around this time that he got into mountain climbing. I don't know much about Norway, except that my favorite film of 2021 came out of there, and there are a bunch of beautiful mountains. Not that I have any personal experience with them, I'm just on Google Images. So this guy must have been like a kid in a Toys R Us surrounded by these things. So how could a guy surrounded by something he loves all the time end up so pessimistic? Well, first of all, it's kinda unclear whether he himself was pessimistic or if he just had a pessimistic philosophy. After all, we see philosophers' personal lives clashing with their philosophies all the time. But as we get into his famous essay, we may also see how he could look so happy in an existence that he deemed so tragic. So let's actually check out The Last Messiah now, cause biography-wise, that's actually the best I could get so far without having to learn Norwegian. The essay starts out by showcasing his view of the human condition. He believes that us humans were overdeveloped, but what does that mean? Well, think about animals. They don't have our rationality or consciousness about existence in the universe. They just sort of care about survival and pleasure. My cat just meows when she's hungry, sleeps all day, and pretends she's a hunter when I play with her. Humans, on the other hand, are more big-brained and can rationalize, create, transform, and essentially make the world our playground. But with this gift comes a downside. Yeah, we could rationalize about the world, but that means we have to be conscious about the tragic parts of our existence. He is powerful in his world, but he curses his power because he has bought it with his soul's harmony, his innocence, his comfort in life's embrace. Now, when he talks about being conscious of our existence, it sounds pretty much like the existential dread we're all pretty familiar with. And to be honest, his conception of existential dread isn't that different than what we can expect. You know, the inevitability of death, the lack of objective meaning, our insignificance in the cosmos. But what is different is the way he describes it. He really has a way with words. From the moment the child embarks on his journey down the river of life, the roar of death's waterfall fills the valley. Always nearer and nearer, it gnaws at the child's happiness. This is our natural condition, to be in a state of anxiety and depression when considering our existence. There's so much uncertainty and horror, and the only real thing we could be certain of is that we can't escape our inevitable demise. His creative imagination shapes new, terrifying possibilities behind death's door, and he understands that there is no escape even in death. Now at last he can begin to trace the outlines of his cosmic situation. He is the universe's helpless prisoner. He is kept so that he can be condemned to nameless possibilities. Such cosmic panic is basic to every human mind. Now you may object and say, hey, I don't feel that way at all about my existence. I'm actually pretty happy and content. Well, Zapffe anticipates this objection. After all, he's not surrounded every day by gloomy, depressed people everywhere, so what's happening? Why aren't more people in this state of angst? Zapffe recognizes 4 different defense mechanisms that don't necessarily let us escape our existential condition, but suppresses it from our consciousness. These 4 mechanisms are isolation, attachment, diversion, and sublimation. Isolation means to kind of push aside these existential thoughts and not to worry about them. In our daily social life, isolation manifests itself through universal, unwritten agreements to conceal our existential condition from one another. It's taboo to bring up death in conversation. But why is that exactly? It's because it's uncomfortable to think about. Yeah, it's the only real certainty in this life, but it's a certainty that people don't like being reminded about. The next mechanism is attachment, and this means to embrace something secure in life, giving some illusion of certainty. Back in the day, we might have found this in powerful religious foundations. Patriotism, family, our dream job that's designed specifically for us. Nowadays, we might find attachment in our social media presence, accumulating great wealth, Netflix shows, working out. The quality of the attachment doesn't matter, so long as it distracts us from our existential condition. Perhaps this is also why Zapffe found comfort in mountain climbing. Maybe that was his attachment, being so physically involved with an activity that your mind couldn't wander off to explore the depressing subject of our existence. The terror of existence stares us in the face, and we realize with a staggering grasp that our minds hang suspended by a web of their own making, and that the abyss of hell gapes below. Our third defense mechanism is diversion. Now, this defense mechanism seems pretty similar to attachment, and it's pretty hard for me personally to separate the two. Diversion essentially is the act of shifting our attention away from our existence and towards something else, something flashy and eye-catching. Zapffe gives the example of prisoners placed in solitary confinement, who have nothing to divert their attention, which causes them a lot of mental despair. We often think of distractions as a bad thing, as something that makes us lose focus on the actual goal in front of us. But in this case, distractions save us from having to face our existence. And finally, we have sublimation, which is turning those cold, hard facts of our existence into something more pleasant to think about. So death is a certainty, yes. But what if we actually put a nice spin on it? What if we say, actually, death is a good thing because it motivates us to make the most out of our time alive? And who wants to live forever anyways? Sublimation is all about creating narratives that are more pleasant to think about than something devastating. For me personally, this is the defense mechanism I kinda like the most. After all, isn't Zapffel's perception of death itself a sublimation? Not to make death sound better, but to make death sound worse than it actually is? Death is death, but our thoughts on death are ultimately up to us. I don't see a problem with putting a more positive spin on death, so long as it doesn't compromise what death actually is, you know? But that's just me. Comment below if you agree or think I'm full of it. So those are the 4 defense mechanisms that keep us away from our natural condition of depression and despair, because they help us escape our consciousness of our existential condition. Now there's a little bit at the end of the essay about Zapffel's disdain for technology and his love for our more biological strengths, and that definitely relates back to his love of mountain climbing. For me though, if we're solely talking about our attachment mechanism, I will agree that being physically involved with something is more mentally engaging than just sitting around watching TV. But anyways, that's Peter Wessel Zapffe. What are your thoughts on this guy? For those more involved with pessimistic philosophers than I, how does he rank amongst the others? Is he the ultimate sad boy, or is he just sad boy light? If you enjoyed this video, then like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more philosophy content. And I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.